Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this one, I'm going to run you through all of the gear on my editing desk. Now, one of the most important things when I'm choosing gear for a setup, it could be a camera setup or even in this case, an editing setup, I just want the gear to work. I want it to be reliable. I don't want to have to constantly be working on the gear just to keep it efficient for my workflow. I want to be able to sit down on my desk, turn things on, and it simply just work. The second thing that I want in a piece of gear is the ability to have it for a long period of time. This allows me to get comfortable with using it, but it also stops me just having to sell gear constantly and go through a recycle process every 6 to 12 months. Almost every piece of gear on this desk I've had for at least 4 to 5 years, and only now I'm starting to think about upgrading a few pieces, which we'll get to. Okay, so let's get into it. Obviously, the first piece of gear that you'll need as an editor is a computer. We opted 5 years ago to go to an iMac. This is a 27-inch iMac. It's actually a 2019 model, so it's 5 years old now. We upgraded the RAM to 64 gigs, and this has been a solid machine for 5 years. It's still perfectly usable for, I would say, 80% of our editing tasks. Where it does start to fall short is in the graphics performance or the graphic card performance. It's only got an 8GB graphics card in here. So when it comes to things like noise reduction and tracking and a few things that are quite graphics hungry in Davinci, it does slow down a lot. So if you're color grading, I wouldn't recommend this particular computer. However, in the past, it's served us great. And it's also just a great bonus to have a 27-inch 5K screen, which is beautiful to look at. So I love the iMac. If I was going to start again today, I would probably buy a Mac Studio. We've been looking at upgrading our suite of iMacs into the Mac Studios, and I think I would probably just go for the baseline model. Everything that I've seen about the Mac Studio is brilliant, so that's definitely the step up that I would choose if I was to replace the computer. This computer has Thunderbolt 3, but it doesn't have a 10 gigabit Ethernet port. And so we've got a Thunderbolt 3 to 10 GBE adapter, and then the Ethernet or the 10 GBE connection connects into our server, which is serving the computer all the data. For our data server, we're still using the same server, the same setup that we've been using for 5 years, and that is the Synology Rackstation 4017XS Plus. Now we've been expanding the data capabilities of this server over the years, just adding more and more drives. I think we're close to 180 terabytes of data now. And this is a great system because it's modular, and every time we take on a job or a new project, we can simply just add more drives and the storage pool expands. All of this is connected to our network via a 10 GBE switch. So it allows multiple computers at any one time to access the server. One thing that we will do very shortly is increase the performance of the server by adding an SSD or NVMe SSD cache to the server. This simply just puts a solid state drive as a buffer between the spinning disks on the server and the computer, and it just increases the read and write performance, especially with multiple computers. So we'll be doing that soon. However, the Synology server is still extremely reliable. It's never crashed once in 5 years. And we also have another server offsite that we continually back up to. I don't see personally any need to upgrade this in the near future, but by simply upgrading the computer that we edit off as well as the SSD cache, it'll just increase that performance and see us through probably for the next 3 or 4 years. Now on the right hand side of the desk, I have a color calibrated monitor. This is a Flanders Scientific DM240. Now this is a relatively old computer screen. I brought this secondhand off a colorist, but it does its job. All it does is simply display a 1080p image of my timeline in a very color accurate way. Now I connect the Flanders screen to the computer via a Thunderbolt 3 to SDI converter. This is the Ultrastudio monitor, which is integrated with Davinci Resolve. So as we're editing in Davinci Resolve, it outputs the image as a clean feed straight to the screen. This isn't using any of the graphics card in the computer, so it's a true clean feed display. And this is critical if you are color grading and finishing projects and you want to do a final QC on this monitor. It's also just a really nice way to see a full screen image all the time. So let's talk about control surfaces, the way we actually operate the computer. So I've got a few panels here and also the pen tablet. I started using a pen as my primary mouse input for the computer. A lot of people ask about this and wonder why I do that. It's purely for my own ergonomics as opposed to any special feature that it gives me. I'm not an illustrator, so I don't use the pressure sensitive input of the pen. But over the years of using a mouse, I would essentially be doing this movement all day on the desk. And over the years, I developed a problem in my wrist and got a really bad shooting pain through my wrist. And so after I used the pen tablet, what happened was I started inputting the controls with a straight wrist and avoided doing this movement. And so over the years, using the pen tablet, it's ultimately saved my wrist. I'd use a full-size Apple Mac keyboard. This is just one that came with the iMac, nothing fancy. It just works great. I've mentioned in other videos that I like the Numpad. It just gives me a whole bunch of extra features when it comes to shortcuts. The primary control surface for color grading is the Blackmagic micro panel. This panel is incredible. It does probably 70% of what you could do with the larger panels, the mini panel, but I really love the fact that it only takes up half of my desk. Now the mini panel is a lot deeper and it would take up pretty much the full amount of the desk. But having the micro panel allows me to also have the keyboard and then also have space in front of the keyboard to rest my wrists. And so what this does is it allows me to have a single setup on my desk where I can move from editing to color grading and to sound design, all of that stuff without having to physically change the desk around. Now, lastly, we have the Davinci Resolve Speed Editor. This is a great little tool if you want to start editing, but honestly, all I use this for is this middle section here for multicam switching. It's just nice to have an extra panel on the right-hand side of my desk to quickly switch between cameras when I'm multicam editing. And then also this jog wheel is really nice as well if I just want to shuttle through the timeline. Now for monitoring audio, I use the DT770 Pro. These are Beyerdynamic headphones, really great flat headphones. And these are plugged into the Focusrite Scarlet audio interface. I just really love the ability to control the headphone amp in front of me here. And it also, this interface allows me to record this microphone for my YouTube videos directly into the computer. And I'm using this microphone into the DBX286S. It's a mic preamp and a processor. It basically just adds a few effects to this microphone on the way into the computer and just keeps it really clean. So if I turn the effects off, this is what the microphone sounds like without any effects, just going straight into the computer. And now with the effects enabled, you can hear it just makes it a little bit richer, does a little bit of de-essing, and also there's an expander or a noise gate on that microphone. In terms of YouTube, I used to do a lot of my YouTubing from home. Now this is just my simple office setup, and I've got a camera on the desk. I use a simple mic stand, and then on the wall I've mounted an Amaran 100X light with a mini dome. It's just really nice having that mounted on the wall. I can just quickly flick it on, turn the camera on, and record these YouTube videos to bring tutorials to you. So the last thing we'll talk about is the actual desk itself. One thing that was really important to us was to have a nice solid desk that would last years when we first started the business. And so we got 10 of these tables made for our team. These are Birch plywood tables. They're really well crafted, super solid. The legs on them are height adjustable, and it's just a rock solid table. These tables are 800 millimeters by 1800 millimeters. So in my opinion, just the perfect size to have a couple of screens, a few panels on the desk, and nothing more than that. I've also got my computer screens on a desk riser. So that just gets the screens a little bit higher. So when I'm sitting here, I can have a straight back and look forward at the screens rather than being hunched over on a lower screen or a MacBook. One other thing I'll just mention, because you will see it in the shot here, is this Drobo 5D3. This was my old setup before we went to our server downstairs, but we've migrated all of that into the Synology server, which we talked about. Well, there you have it, guys. I hope that was helpful and gave you some insight into the desk and the gear that I use every day to produce commercial work and documentaries. If you're someone who's starting out, I wouldn't stress about the gear. I'd get a computer that you can afford, a mouse and a keyboard, and you can honestly start from there. Your gear does not have to be fancy, particularly if you're an editor. If you're an editor, you can work primarily off proxies, which allows you to use lower end computers to do the bulk of the work. If you're working more on a hybrid setup where you're editing, but then you're also bringing that into the online editing world where you're doing graphics and color grading and sound design and mastering, all that sort of stuff, then you will need to upgrade your computer to something a little bit more beefy. If I was 100% color grading, I would definitely upgrade this computer into a Mac Studio at a minimum. But apart from that, this gear has served me well for the last 5 years. And as I start to upgrade this, I'll make sure to do videos to let you guys know what I'm thinking. But at this stage, I'm really happy with everything. It works, and that's the most important thing. For now, peace out. We'll see you in another one. And if you have any questions, please drop them in the YouTube comments below. I'll be sure to get back to you. Peace out.